Hello, everybody. You are the political vigilante. So we just had Beely on the show, a journalist that uncovered lies that have been told to us by the Western media about Syria and how the white helmets aren't these heroes that were in that documentary that won the Oscar. Nope, they're funding. They're getting funding and helping terrorists and ISIS, and America is funding ISIS and Al Qaeda to try to overthrow the Assad regime in Syria. That's what was happening. That's what was going on there. So in that conversation, we brought up the topic of Serena Shim, and many people were like, well, who is Serena Shim? So I wanted to shed some light on who she was. She was a journalist who uncovered some similar stuff and had a mysterious accident, an American citizen. So it bears repeating. We have a lot more viewers to the show now, and I want you to know who she is. The life and unexplained death of a Syria war reporter. Okay. 2 days before her death in 2014, Serena Shim, an American reporter from Michigan, stood on the same Syrian border that Turkish troops and allied Syrian rebels recently crossed on President Erdogan's orders to drive out the Kurdish militia that Turkey considers terrorists. The same Kurds led the successful international fight against the Islamic State in northeast Syria. Shim was fearful. She had recently reported for the Iranian-backed Press TV about Turkey's role in smuggling ISIS fighters into Syria on World Food Program trucks. Now, we've talked about this, how a lot of these NGOs are shady. Whitney Webb has talked about this. Vanessa Beely talked about this. And it's one of the things that Serena Shim covered. ISIS was being smuggled across the border through Turkey on World Food Program trucks. In her final live broadcast, she described how agents from the Turkish National Intelligence Organization had been asking questions about her movements while she was covering the siege of Kobani by ISIS militants. The intelligence agency had labeled her a spy, she said, and pressed locals to give them a phone call if they saw her. Via video feed, the Detroit native speculated that the unnerving surveillance of her by the MIT was triggered by the bright light she had shined on Turkey's meddling in Syria since 2012. This is the same Turkey that will not acknowledge the Armenian genocide, that is currently funding Azerbaijan, that is bombing a disputed region that has been, it's basically an Armenian region. There's headstones there for centuries. Armenia's been there forever. Turkey's helping that. Just to give you a little background on what's going on. Shim amassed evidence of militant training camps operating near the Turkey-Syria border, interviewed the militias themselves, and filmed footage of long caravans of trucks passing through the Turkish side of rebel-controlled Bab el-Hawa border crossing. Shim was killed on October 19th, 2014, 2 days after her last broadcast. She was the lone fatality following a car crash in in a Turkish province. The crash may not have been an accident. Official reports claim discrepancies. What should be pointed out here, she's an American citizen. America, the government, other American news agencies did no investigation, said nothing. A year or so ago, when Khashoggi was chopped up by the Saudis, murdered, there was a lot of this is awful by American mainstream media journalists. It should. A journalist got murdered. That was awful. No mention of Serena Shim. She should have been mentioned in the same conversation. It happened in the same part of the world. No mention. I never knew about her till I interviewed Susie Dawson on this show about 2 years ago. So this report was from a year ago. Now with the world watching and the horror of the Turkish-led invasion of northern Syria, following President Donald Trump's decision to pull U.S. military support for Kurdish fighters in the region, it seems time to look more deeply into her tragic story. They close those close to her claim that even her fellow journalists reacted with dangerous indifference, possibly linked to Shim's work as a freelancer for Iran's Press TV, considered by many in the Western media to be a little more than a propaganda outfit for Iran's Ayatollahs. When asked to comment during a news conference the following day, a U.S. State Department spokesman said that the local authorities in Turkey were apparently handling the investigation. Oh, that's how you just sweep it under a rug. What was simply dubbed a heavy vehicle was said to have triggered the collision. The heavy vehicle later evolved into a concrete mixer that allegedly collided with Shim's rental car. Shim's first cousin, Judy Irish, was the driver at the time of the crash, sustained only minor injuries, and was taken to a nearby hospital. Shim was taken to a separate hospital. It was over 30 miles away from where her cousin was treated. So two people in a car accident, one taken to the nearest hospital, which is what anybody in any car accident anywhere in the world, I think, would do. Serena Shim, who the Turkish government was sending its secret police to come get, was taken 30 miles away. According to the Daily News, the local Gendarmerie in Turkey initially wrote in their official crash report that Irish was the sole culprit in the accident. The report went on to quote the testimony of the alleged driver of the concrete mixer. A car traveling at a very high speed went out of control, entered my lane, and came under my truck. However, that December, it was reported that Zurich's public prosecutor office was seeking up to 6 years in prison for Salon, accusing the driver of causing death through negligence. That trial never occurred. So they lied about the accident, said there was a sole culprit. Then they found out that maybe the concrete mix driver was driving negligently. It's also commonly misreported that Shim was departing from Kobani and on her way back to her hotel in the Turkish province of Hatay when the accident happened. But it was just the opposite. We spent one night in the hotel in Hatay and left again for Kobani in the morning, said Irish, explaining that Shim had become so frustrated with the local cameraman that she had hired that she decided to drive him back to Hatay and purchase a camera on her own instead. I bought a car. I have a camera. This is a one-man show now. In the days after Shim's passing, strange photographs began to appear online. One photograph shows Irish in a hospital bed with a large bandage covering her broken nose, the only injury she suffered. This was paired with a snapshot of the front page of Shim's passport, and later on, a slew of images depicting a compact car crushed like a tin can and facing toward a cement truck that appeared undamaged. Her cousin, Irish, a U.S. citizen, disputes the cement truck, stating that it was a semi-truck that caused the collision by intentionally running them down. I was driving in the fast lane on a 3-lane one-way highway. The semi-truck was behind me in the middle lane. He sped up very quickly and cut in front of me and made me crash into him. No photographs shown. Early reports alleged that Shim had died at the scene of the collision, but were later amended to claim that she had died of heart failure a half hour after arriving at the hospital. While autopsies were allegedly conducted in both Turkey and Lebanon, the results were not verifiable. You would have not known she was gone, said her mother. One tiny little piece of hair was out of place. Her makeup was completely on. Her eyeliner, everything. There was not a scratch on her. Shim was warned, this is before she got killed, obviously, of dangerous blowback repercussions facing the country on account of the massive proliferation of weapons along Turkey's border with Syria. Such fears eventually became reality following a string of deadly terrorist attacks that reached as far to Istanbul. She reported on Turkish government's eagerness to invade Syria. There's promises and negotiations that are made under the table between Erdogan and the West. He wants to get the job over with. There's some photos of her. There's her doing journalism. Shim's final months were spent mostly in Iraq, covering the country's parliamentary elections and the Iraq army's fight against ISIS terrorists, and then in the Ukraine, reporting on the armed conflict in the country's east, with a stop in between for the Iran P5 talks in Vienna before returning to Turkey for what she envisioned to be her swan song as a foreign correspondent. She had quietly been making plans to move back to Michigan with her husband and 2 small children. Not only had Shim announced that the MIT, that's the Turkish like secret military, whatever, FBI types, was looking for her and that she was a bit frightened at what they might use against her, her lengthy history of reporting their forbidden inside Turkey made such fear all the more credible. The treatment of the press by Erdogan and his ruling Justice and Development Party had been appalling, with over 150 journalists imprisoned inside Turkey as of February 19, according. Given all the facts, it becomes increasingly hard to understand why the U.S. government has stayed silent. That's the story of Serena Shim, an American citizen uncovering. And what's also is some of that was through American military bases. So anybody that's uncovered the scam of, Assad is using gas weapons against his own people, it makes no sense. Anyone who uncovers that gets either smeared or killed. That's the story of Serena Shim. I haven't seen Rachel Maddow scream about that on her TV show. I haven't seen Tucker Carlson even talk about it. Tucker Carlson is one of the few people, while being a right-wing psycho on a lot of issues, is the only one that's talks about Julian Assange. I haven't heard Anderson Cooper mention her name. I don't know. Maybe I missed it, but. So that's who Serena Shim is, folks. You got to come to this show to learn about her because they want it hidden. No investigation, no nothing. That's why I do the show. That's why I have Vanessa Beeley on the show, Whitney Webb. In the past, I've had Susie Dawson. These are people out there doing real work. Tara Kadad, uncovering all of these lies. Same old story. It's for oil and pipelines and money and power and the war machine. Anybody calls that out, we smear them. They have weird, mysterious deaths. That's how it goes down. Thanks for watching this show. Support what I do. And I'm an independent media guy. I don't get money from ExxonMobil. Boeing doesn't support this show, oddly enough. You'd think they would. So go to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, blockchain cryptocurrency platform. They do not censor us. They let us say and do whatever we want on that platform. It is awesome. Also patreon.com/Graham Elwood. Hit the subscribe button to YouTube. They're deplatforming people. So Rockfin's my backup. So also I have a Venmo. I have a PayPal button at grahamelwood.com. I have several different cryptocurrency wallets, Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum that are in the show notes. Support the show any way you can. We very much appreciate it. And if money's tight, I get it. Listen to the Political Vigilante podcast on iTunes and Spotify, and the Graham Elwood channel on Pandora, both my comedy albums. Those are free ways to support the show. Thanks for watching, everybody. You're making Gotham great again. Shaving knuckles for justice. Cuckoo.